Welcome back to Full Circle Florida. The premise is it's a new kind of doctor's office in Florida that claims to offer patients what they call medical freedom. But critics say it's actually politics disguised in a catchphrase. Investigative reporter Katie LaGrone takes us inside this growing debate.
In the quiet beachside city of Venice on Florida's west coast, a new healthcare office is already making waves.
I don't understand why people are so judgmental towards us.
Here, medical freedom is not just words on a mobile billboard parked outside.
We purposely came in to tell you it was great.
It's a guiding principle inside, says co-owner Tanya Peruse, who opened the We the People Health and Wellness Center 3 months ago.
What does that mean to you guys here?
The freedom to make your own healthcare decisions without being pushed or forced to do anything that you don't want to do.
Peruse, a mom of 2 and former EMT, says she was inspired after what she witnessed during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic.
People were not going to see their doctor because they were scared, because they didn't want to get vaccinated and felt pressured to do things that they didn't want to do.
Peruse, local president of the conservative group Moms for America, is part of a grassroots right-wing movement in Sarasota County fueled by the pandemic. At one point, she helped hundreds of parents get signed waivers exempting their kids from school mask mandates. This is video from that event.
We had over 3,000 people in line. It was insane. It was insane.
Today, some of the doctors and nurses who signed those forms now work here. And Peru says many of the families they helped are among their estimated 400 patients.
This is our patriotic room.
Throughout the clinic, images of the American flag hang amid depictions of freedom, liberty, and the Constitution that inspired its name.
So there's no political motivation.
There's no political motivation. This right
Even
here
though we've got...
is not political.
Okay.
To us, this means freedom. That's all it means.
It's a crusade she knows draws public criticism.
Are you recording right now?
Yeah.
Okay, can you stop recording?
And she admits distrust in mainstream media.
I don't know what's happening here. I don't know why they started recording.
During our visit, a photographer suddenly started filming us.
I'm sorry, camera's off, but his camera's still on.
Even after this doctor asked us all to stop.
If he's gonna record, I don't see why.
At a time when freedom has become a popular catchphrase for conservative politics in Florida, Peru says her clinic offers patients an alternative to government-controlled health care and what she calls overreach. Here, insurance is not accepted, but ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, malaria drugs touted by the right but not the FDA to treat COVID, are welcomed and prescribed, while medically proven vaccinations of any kind aren't even an option.
So no flu shot.
No, ma'am.
And what about the child vaccines?
We don't do any vaccines here.
I spent my entire career as a promoter of traditional childhood vaccines.
Dr. Renata Moon is the clinic's pediatrician, whose controversial views on the COVID-19 vaccine left her questioned, investigated, even discredited by her previous employer.
We're being silenced and threatened.
Before working here, Moon was a licensed doctor in Washington State and professor at Washington State University.
What in the world are we being asked to inject into our nation's children?
But after publicly questioning the COVID-19 vaccine during this D.C. roundtable 1 year ago, the university didn't renew her contract. In this letter from the college's dean, Moon is called out for contributing to the possible spread of misinformation. Today, she remains under investigation by the Washington Medical Commission.
I would say the world changed. I don't think I changed.
These drug companies, they don't create cures, they create customers.
Dr. Michelle Scott, who treats adults at the clinic, was recruited after getting fired from an urgent care center for refusing to wear a mask during the pandemic.
I'd been there 18 months and was ready to leave anyways.
Scott is a staunch anti-vaxxer whose personal website is riddled with government criticism and unproven treatments for COVID-19.
I don't think I will ever take a vaccine again.
Patients we spoke with buy into the clinic's more natural, less government approach.
I'm not saying that all the doctors out there are bad, but I think the insurance companies greatly influence what they have to do.
Is this clinic doing anything wrong?
I guess it depends how you define wrong.
But Dr. Stephen Rosenberg, a Florida dermatologist who leads a state panel that determines if a doctor should be disciplined, has concerns.
What they're doing is technically legal. It doesn't really match with the standard of care that physicians are accustomed to. There's always somebody who's going to try to take advantage of those individuals who may not be sophisticated enough to really appreciate what is the appropriate treatments.
So you believe that this is a group that's taking advantage of people as opposed to offering them something different?
Well, they found a little niche for themselves of people who, believe in this, and they're taking advantage financially.
What do you say, I mean, overall, to people who might hear this and say, okay, you know what, those are a bunch of conservative political activists trying to kind of offer their, quackery. What do you say to them?
I don't know quackery. I mean, just because you have a difference of opinion doesn't mean that you're not right in your own way. We have our own thing. Come take a visit, take a tour.
And Katie joining us right now. This is interesting insight into this sort of new trend, and I'm just wondering how widespread this is. Are there other clinics like that across the country?
So we have not found any other clinic like this one around the country or even here in Florida. I mean, remember, this is sort of a very fringe group of doctors who are doing this. And in terms of even the concern as to is this going to grow? Certainly the clinic and the operators behind this clinic see this being sort of the new model for healthcare, not only here in Florida, but across the country. But in terms of the actual practices opening up, we're just not seeing it.
And so it just seems like with everything else, politics, education, everything's being questioned now. Is that now bleeding into the broader medical community, or are they considered still to be outliers? And that's where they might stay. I mean, there are people in this country that would say Dr. Anthony Fauci was every bit of a quack as the people that were, hawking ivermectin during the height of the pandemic. A lot of things are being questioned now in hindsight, going on 4 years after the pandemic. So, they clearly believe in what they're doing. But are they a growing minority, or is the medical community starting to question how they're doing things?
I think at this point it's still very much a small minority. I mean, here in Florida, there is some movement. Earlier this year, the governor signed sweeping legislation sort of touting this medical freedom bill, right? This new medical freedom law here in Florida that gives doctors the right to go ahead and prescribe alternative treatments, gives them the right to free speech, but it also does away with any kind of mandates for vaccines and masks, but it's really related to COVID-19. And so, yes, you've got that front, but in terms of the mass medical community kind of, going along with this or having to deal with this, it's just not happening right now. It's the legislature who has given some freedom to a very fringe group of doctors that has not caught on mainstream.
Okay. You were also at the Sarasota County School Board meeting this week, sort of the center of a controversy right now with Bridget Ziegler, the school board member there. People could look up the details. We don't have to get into all of that. But basically, the school board essentially recommended that she step down amid this scandal involving her and her husband. She, it was interesting. She asked the attorney there, does this have any teeth? The answer is no. So she's not going to step down. Is that where this thing dies?
Essentially. I mean, she ultimately has the final say on whether or not she's going to choose to resign. The governor is the only other power, the only other authority that has that power to go ahead and remove her, but there really has to be some legal ground for that. And at this point, her just dealing with an enormous amount of public embarrassment, it appears, but not facing a criminal investigation of her own. It just doesn't seem like there's any kind of legal weight for him to do anything, much less the fact that she has been a big part of his campaign and his parental rights movement.
Correct. So the arguments about hypocrisy that have been airing out, it's not a good look, obviously, for the Sarasota County School Board and the optics of that. And speaking of how that was managed, you were there before this even started, and we have the video here to show it. You were essentially being body blocked by the PR person there, whose salary is bought and paid for by the taxpayers of Sarasota County, and everything in that room, by the way, bought and paid for and funded by the taxpayers of Sarasota County and by extension the residents of Florida. So these are public officials who are refusing the media's right to question elected people and hold them accountable. What was said to you before this even got started?
Right. I mean, it was very clear, hey, if she doesn't want to talk, you're not going to go up to her. And you're right, it is. This is a public meeting, publicly funded, and these officials need to be held publicly accountable. And that not only happened at that point during the work session, but later on in the evening, even before the school board meeting began, that same PR person essentially addressed the media in the room saying, hey, unless the school board member wants to talk and comes over here and sort of pointed closer to us,
right,
you're not going to have the opportunity to talk to them. And very specifically told us that Mrs. Ziegler was not planning to address the media afterwards.
And she really hasn't answered really any questions at this point.
No, she hasn't responded certainly to us or any other media outlet that we know of at this point.
All right, well, we'll see where this goes from here. Katie, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it. Full Circle Florida continues right after this.